Alright, I'm going to do a simple as possible scrap mechanic modding video. To start, you're going to want to go to the local files for scrap mechanic. In Steam, you can get to that through going to the game and go to local files, browse local files, and then probably just bookmark that folder. It's going to make things easier. Now that we're in this directory, the program files, Steam apps, common, scrap mechanic, data, a lot of what you'll need is going to be in the objects folder. So let's go to objects, database, the shape sets JSON here. We're going to add, let's just call it sample mod. So add the name that you're going to want your mod to be right in here. Just kind of follow the same format. Now go to the shape sets folder, and we're going to create a new file. Give it the same name that we put in the list there, and this will be our mod. We'll want the basic format. Just go to any one of these existing ones. I'll just copy the whole thing and then paste it into the mod, save it. Now I don't need so many things in here right now, so I'm going to keep this first one. I think we'll just make an example wheel. So the structure, you'll see they're kind of broken up with the brackets there. If we get rid of everything here, you just got to make sure these last brackets that you don't delete too many. Like if you get rid of these closing ones here, you're going to break your mod. Now if you only have one item, you don't want that comma at the end, but if we put multiple in here, so if I had two things, I want a comma in between them, but not one at the end. But for now we're just going to start with one part, so we'll get rid of that comma. We don't need the legacy ID, that's just for parts before they updated to having UUIDs, so just get rid of those. We don't want to use the same UUID, so let's get rid of that. Our mesh is going to have a different name. We can use diff nor spec color, that's fine. Prop C we'll keep, so there's a lot of different things to get into here, but for the most part, I'm just going to make it the same. I'm going to make a cylinder 3x1 simple wheel size, and I'll even use the same material here that they've got. It'll just be easier for this video. We'll maybe get into making your own later. This is the generator that the devs linked to in one of the dev blogs. I already reloaded this page, so that's a unique UUID here. I'm going to copy that and paste it into here. The mesh, let's call it simple mod wheel. So I'm just naming it ahead of time. I'm just going to give it the same name once I make the 3D model. I've made a simple wheel, vaguely wheel-like shape. As for using Blender, I'm not the one to give a tutorial on how to use it because I don't like this program and it's a pain to use, but I would just go to YouTube and look up tutorials for just basic Blender modeling. It'll be easier if you have some different windows here, because you can put your texture on one side, and on the bottom here I'm going to set up, what's this, the node editor I think it's called, and when I'm going to add a material, so again you just have to watch videos on how to add materials and set them up, but if I can find it here, give it an image texture. What I'm going to go to is back to the objects folder, and in textures vehicle we've got the different textures for the wheels here. So in Blender I'm just going to grab probably, I think the small wheel. We'll go to the diff image here, and if I texture paint, alright, it looks a mess right now, but if I slide over here I've got the view, I think this is on the UV image editor, and I just went to texture paint, just kind of makes the images load here so I can see what I'm working with. But that's this is textured here, but I don't have a UV map yet, so it's kind of a mess. So I'll go back to object mode here. I'm going to close that down. I don't need to see that anymore. Now I can go to view the texture. Again, these sort of things you need to watch some Blender tutorials to get familiar with. But what I can do is tab into edit mode, and now I usually like to start by just doing the smart UV project. Just gets the mesh over here, so it's at least not as messy. And like just kind of slide that off. If you go to your edge select, these blue lines are sharp edges. Let me turn that off so it's easier to look at, and go back to solid so I can see. So I'm going to select these edges here. I'm going to mark that seam. And oh, I got a mistake there. Mark that seam. I think I'll also mark these ones. This is going to be kind of up to you how you want to kind of slice this up. Look up, watch tutorials on, model unwrapping or UV mapping. Now what I'm going to do is, actually let's see what happens if I select the whole model, smart project again. I want to get this outside a little different, so I'm going to get these out of here. But this part, I'm not really happy with how that's laid out, so if I select these, and now I'm going to use the cylinder projection. Aligned object. See, that's better. That's it's not the same orientation, but I can rotate it. Apologize for this isn't the best tutorial on how to exactly what I'm doing here, but I'm just trying to show the basic concept of you need to cut up the mesh into your UV map, and then if I go back to viewing the texture, you can see as I move it around, it changes just that part on the model. Now this doesn't line up quite right on their image because this wasn't like it's not really designed for it. But if you had your own custom image, this is imagine these things would line up better. Maybe I should have done something with a custom texture for a better example, but I mean, this will get you started. So you can see I'm kind of lining this up here. And this one, put on this, scale it down. Now you can see it's certainly got its issues, but how it's getting closer. Where basically just watch some tutorials on how to UV map your models and how to make custom textures. But really, that's all it is. You're loading up the image, you're marking some seams on the object and unwrapping it to the picture. When you bring the model into the game, it's still going to carry over all that information for how to line up. You just have to make sure that if you've got a custom image, you're going to want to change the diff image here The diff is the one you're going to see on the model. You're going to want that to be the same. The ASG here, this is for like the shininess of the object, and the normal map, that's going to be for sort of like the 3D-ness of it. Those again, if you look at online, what a normal map is, things like that. Learn a bit more about those if you don't know. Now to export this, one of the things you might want to do, if you select the whole model, Control-T can triangulate the faces. I'm pretty sure when I started out I didn't have all the faces triangulated and I had some weird glitchy things going on. Might just be coincidence, but to be safe, it's probably best to triangulate everything. And over here, I'm going to give a name next to this little triangle thing, whatever the heck that is. Let's call it new mesh. Sure, why not? Or no, new wheel. There we go. I'm going to go to, I want to make sure I'm not in the edit mode. You want to be in the object mode. And you're going to just kind of go over to export, Ogre 3D. There's some options over here. I don't really mess with most of them. Seems to be fine. Export. And go to the folder where you've got that. I've got it here. It's now going to be a mesh.xml. If you look at that, you can, in this format, you can kind of view it in here. You can see it's got all these vertex and faces and things. But that file isn't going to work in the game yet. Now what you're going to need, I've got the Ogre SDK, and in here, in the directory that the Ogre SDK is, if you go to bin release, looking for the XML converter. So I'm just going to take this, my new wheel mesh here, drag it into that folder. I'm going to drop it on the XML converter, converts it. I'm going to delete the XML, I don't need that anymore. Now I've got this new wheel.mesh. I'm going to bring it back over so I don't get everything all cluttered up in here. And now I have a mesh for Ogre. And using Ogre Meshy, I can view it and see that, yep, it's a working mesh for Ogre. You can see the access here. Oh, actually, you know what? I made a mistake. This is a good thing, I guess, to show you. You can see the origin point is all the way off to the side. That's not going to look right in the game. So, actually, I'm glad that happened. If we go back into here, I made my model level with the sort of plane. This origin point, you need to be centered in the model for most things you'd be making, but because it's 1, we're going to want to bring this model down 0.5. Oops, I went up 0.5. Again, negative 0.5. There we go. So now the model is halfway through because we want this point in the center, and it's, let's see if I can remember. Okay, there we go. I have to look up the controls. It was Control Shift Alt C. I moved the origin to the center of mass. Just to be safe, I'm going to hit Control A. I'm going to apply location, apply rotation and scale. Just make sure everything is how it should be. So I'm just going to export that again. Go back to the exporter, export Ogre. I'm going to delete this mesh. I'm going to do that over. Alright, so we're going to now, let's do the same thing. I'm going to drag this mesh file in here, drag it onto the converter, delete the XML, bring the mesh back over, done with that. Now, let's check that. See, it's a good idea to kind of take a look and turn on the axis, and yeah, see, that's in the middle now. That'll be much better wheel. You see, I already went with a different name because I forgot that I had given it a name here, so I'm just gonna take this name here, change that, so make sure the mesh has the same name. That's really important, otherwise you're just gonna crash the game. Now this is going to go, I'm going to cut this and go back to my data folder for Scrap Mechanic, go into Objects, go into Mesh, and I tend to just stick everything in the Vehicle folder, but you can sort them into, you know, put your decor, things like that, but it doesn't really matter where they are. That's just for your own organization. I can't simply just create your own like mod folder. It's not going to recognize it. There is a way to do that, but I'm not going to get into that. But now that the mesh is in here, this should work. Alright, so let's check our inventory, and sure enough, there's the wheel. We haven't made an icon yet, so you're just going to see a blank space here, and when you put it in your inventory, you're not going to see it, but you can see the preview there showing the wheel. And go in here, you can place it. So as far as just getting something into the game, that's really all it takes. Again, I apologize, this isn't the best model here. It's like I didn't get it all lined up nice, but you know, you just gotta take the time to actually line everything up the way you want and make a custom texture if you need to. For a lot of things, if you just kind of browse the existing textures in the game, you might find a lot of things you can repurpose. Now, if you want to have an icon, probably the easiest way is to take a screenshot here. Right there is probably fine. Now I've opened the screenshot in Photoshop, and I'm going to go to the vehicle folder here, and well, that's not the folder I want, but go to data again, and this time we're going to go to GUI. There's an icon map image in here. Just going to load that up. I've got a grid that I turn on that's set to 80 by 80. That's the size of the icons. So that just lets me have a reference of where to put them. And there's probably a much better way to make your icons, but the way I've been doing it is to just kind of go and cut them out. It's I try using like the magic wand selection tool, but there's too much gray and everything just kind of gets messed up, so it's been working out better for me just to kind of cut it out. So now I've got a cutout icon. I'm going to go over to the icon map, paste it in here. That should be fine. So now what we're going to have to do is find the location of that icon. Actually, we'll export this image. Go to the data folder, GUI, and let's make this a PNG because that's the kind of file. Icon map, yes, we're just going to save over the same one. So now we've got the icon map image, but we're going to need to give it the XML in order for it to know where it is. So here, icon map XML. Let's go down to the bottom. You're going to want to grab from index to the end of the index here. Just copy, paste a new one in. We need to replace the UUID, and this location needs to be updated. This is just the columns and rows here. Yeah, so it's the column first and then the row. So that's why we're on row 880 for multiple in a row here as it works its way across. So if this plant here, that was 80 by 960. So this one, we want to go another 80, so that's going to be 160 by 960. So we're just going 80 pixels over to the right for the next icon. And to get the UUID, just come grab it from the one we already made up here in the shape set. We just got to make sure it's the same uuid that we're using. And when you put it here, now it knows that this item, this is where to find the icon for it. So if you were using the same icon for something, if you were just making if you're going to make a modded wheel, but you don't want to go through trouble making an icon, you could just find the coordinates for one of these existing wheels and use that as your icon. And you just happen to know that the extra wheel is your modded one. You'll see your wheel in the preview window anyway, so this is really just an option if you want to have custom icons. Let's give it an item description as well. So back to data, GUI, and inventory item descriptions down here. This JSON file. Come down to the end. Again, just copy the existing format. So on this one, it's a little different. Make sure what you're grabbing is, see where the comma ends here? This UID is part of the one below it, so you want that there. You don't want to copy just the brackets. You need to make sure you've got this quoted UUID at the beginning. So what I would do is just look for that comma, grab right before the comma, grab down to end here, not this end bracket, and paste it in. Because you still need this one at the end here. You don't want to, if you remove that, you'll just break your descriptions. Just going to kind of clear this out here. And something that'll make it easier if you're making more mod parts, I would recommend open a text file and start putting some just kind of clear out some of these general things you'll be using, and you could save one that's already just kind of a blank template for you to use in the future, so you can paste them in and you don't have to kind of erase the old information. If we go back to here, I'm going to copy the UUID again. I'm going to put it up there. Title, we'll say mod wheel 1. See, whatever. Wait. I'm pretty sure you can just put whatever you want and wait. I don't think it has to just say heavy, medium, light, whatever, but we'll actually find out right now. I've never actually bothered to to put anything else in there. I think everything is lightweight as far as my mod is concerned. It's all lightweight. I don't care. I don't really bother messing with the weight ever. Preview scale, that's going to change how big it looks. If you're really picky, you can play around with that number. I usually just leave it alone and don't care. So if we save that, and now we load the game. Alright, so we're back in the game, and you can see the icon is now here. There it is. The color, there was a color code for that. It's in the description here. This, the RGB, that's where you can set your custom color. And as for where you want these to be, see how this is up near the beginning? If you want your mod parts at the end, back in the objects database shapesets, that's because I've got it at the top of the list. So in the shapeset list, the order things are in here is the order they'll be in the inventory. So if you want if you want your decor to be in the top of the list, just move decor up to the top. If you want your mod to be at the end, put it at the end of the list, not the top. That's all that's making the difference there. And within the shape sets themselves, if you go into vehicle, this order here of the wheels, then the pipes, this order matches the order of those types of parts. So it's got the wheels, then the pipes, but if you wanted, if you want to change the order of these wheels, you would just change that in here. You just swap the order in this file. Check the description. So, yep, even the weight, you can type whatever you want for the weight. Type in whatever description you want. Type in whatever title you want. So that's the basics of making a mod, I guess. I guess I can give us a brief breakdown of it here. So you've got your it's so hard to say, isn't it? UUID. You need that unique number it's going to reference for different information about your part. The name of the mesh file you gave it. There's some different ones. There's like, if you just had diff spec color, if you look at different parts in the game, you'll see some of the different ones, and you can kind of make a list of all of them. Maybe I'll put up a file with a list of all the ones I found, but if you just had diff spec color, you don't need a normal. You could just have your code like this, or on the other hand, if it was diff nor color is one, and you don't need this, just have those. The rotation set, you can look at what these all are. If we go back to the objects database, you have your rotation sets, and there's your whole list of ones the game comes with. These are confusing to look at. You'll just have to kind of get used to what they do. For the most part, the names will start to make sense. Prop Y is going to spin around on your Y-axis of your model. Prop Z is going to spin around on your Z. Prop YZ is going to spin around on Y, then it's going to spin around on Z, etc. Basically, make a part and put different rotation sets on it and see what happens. That'll kind of tell you what they do. So that's what the rotation set is. The color, that's just the code for the default color it gets before you paint it. Stop that. The cylinder here. The cylinder shape, your diameter is for your wheel. This isn't going to change your model at all. It's only going to change your collision. So if I make this a 5 diameter wheel, or 5x2, the next size up, my model isn't going to act right. I'm going to have the collision of the larger wheel, but I'm still only going to see the smaller wheel. So it's going to be like the wheel is floating off of the ground. And if I had it 1 by 1 like a pipe, my wheel is going to sink into the ground, even though I see the model. So the model you see has nothing to do with the way it acts physically. That's all in your it's all in this here. Now let's go in the shape sets and just look at some other kinds of parts. Let's look at something like the containers, and you can see we've got a box. So that you don't want multiples of the same, like you don't want to have a cylinder and a box. I think it just uses the first one and doesn't like crash or anything, but you just want to have the one type of shape. So you could have a box, and which your X, Y, and Z. For beginning modding, I would suggest just give it the general shape. Put your origin point of your model in the center of your model, and the overall dimensions of your model put in here for the box, and your collision will be close enough. It's really only if you need something more complex, or if you're doing like a wedge shape, that you're going to need to get into the whole shapes there. The density, this will affect how heavy your part is. I think lightweight blocks are 250. Like the wood is 250. And again, just look at existing parts, and you can see what they're using on them and use that for these. This is the physics material is just what it sounds like. So if you want the wheel to sound like metal when it gets hit with a hammer, or when it bangs into things, put metal, glass, etc. That's only the noise it makes. And the sticky is where you can connect to. If you want to be able to attach something to all sides of your model, just get rid of that. By default, it's everything. Make sure you have the last thing in this list with no comma at the end, otherwise your mod isn't going to work. Otherwise, you can specify them. Like if I want to add sticky to the Y, I can go like positive Y and negative Y. If I only want you to attach it to the negative Z side of the model, then I would just say sticky negative Z. When you're starting out, the easiest thing might just be not have that in there and just let your model be attached from all sides and not have to worry about it. You can always go and put that in later. So hopefully that can get you started. It's not the best tutorial ever, but it's something. I don't really have practice doing these sorts of things, so hopefully that helps. And maybe I'll make another one of these in the future going into further detail.